It's Radio Free 501c, the voice of Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm Cecilia Sapp. Don't forget to subscribe. We're on your favorite podcast service. This week, I'm joined by first-time guest Mike Bober, CAE, who's president and CEO of the Pet Advocacy Network, and we're going to be talking about the 4 F's of legislative impact. Welcome to episode 208. Hey everybody, it's Monday, August 28th, and that means it's time for another episode of Radio Free 501c. I'm your host, Cecilia Supp. I am the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips Consulting, and I'm a CAE and a CNP. And if you don't know what that is, it's Certified Nonprofit Professional. So to our global audience, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. And thanks everyone for joining us. This week, we have first-time guest Mike Bober, who's president and CEO of the Pet Advocacy Network. And we're going to talk about the 4 F's of legislative engagement. But before we dive into the topic, Mike, welcome. And would you like to say hello to our audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Absolutely. Hello to the audience. My name is Mike Bober. I'm the president and CEO of the Pet Advocacy Network and live in Alexandria, Virginia, where I have 2 beautiful daughters and a wonderful wife, and perhaps most importantly to my position, a 3-year-old Cocker Spaniel who was probably one of the first pandemic puppies out there.
Really? Oh my goodness.
We got him the first week of April 2020. So basically, as soon as we went into lockdown, we decided it was time to start adding the chaos of a puppy to our home. And thankfully, we haven't looked back.
Oh, I have 2 dogs.
Really?
They're 15 years old and incredible good health. I'm so thankful every day. So they are not pandemic puppies, but I did notice their behavior deteriorated is the better word because we were home all the time.
I think all of our behaviors deteriorated a little bit because we were home all the time. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because I know mine did for a while, and then I said, "Hey, I got to pull myself back together." So it's, but anyway, so we realized, Mike and I realized as we were preparing for this episode, we have a lot of common, similar interests, and we're already starting to get off track. So we're going to bring it back to legislative engagement. And Mike does have the 4 F's. And so, Mike, let's start with the first one. What's the first F?
Sure. Well, the 4 F's really just kind of to tee up the concept in general. The 4 F's is a shorthand that I use to talk with people about the things that are important to keep in mind when you're engaging with really any elected official or staff. And it applies not only to constituents, to individuals, but really it's something that I think all of us in the advocacy world can keep in mind as well. The first of the 4 F's is face. And I say that because whoever you are and whatever meeting you're going into, you want to keep in mind that you are the face of the organization, of the topic. For the amount of time that your meeting is taking place, you represent not just yourself, but everything that you're talking about. And that can be a very positive thing. It actually goes a long way toward humanizing topics that can be a little bit esoteric or a little bit in the weeds for some staffers. But it's also something that can really have a slightly negative effect as well if you lose sight of it and you become somebody who really kind of poorly represents your issue. So it's something that we really try to drive home to everyone, is that remember that for all intents and purposes, you could very well be the only person who ever talks to the person across from you about the topic at hand. And so you want to make sure that you are representing yourself, representing your business or your cause to the best of your ability.
And so how can you, as the Chief Staff Executive at Pet Advocacy Network, how can you help your members and your staff prepare for that, to be that face?
Well, that's something that we've actually had a lot of success with over the past 5 or 6 years now. We actually implemented a legislative fly-in for the pet care community. And we bring people into Washington. We facilitate meetings with their elected officials. But We also make sure that we take time with them ahead of time to prepare them a little bit, to give them an idea of what they can expect going into a meeting, whether it's with a staffer or with an elected official. We kind of try to take the time to put them at ease and to remind them that there is a certain amount of expertise that comes with their experience, and to help them get ready to sort of own that expertise as they move forward.
That is so important. I don't think we think about that enough because
Yeah.
when we know it, we're not necessarily thinking about, well, does somebody else know what we know?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've run into time and time again. I came from a background in lobbying and advocacy prior to taking on the chief executive role, and it surprises me every time that there are a lot of folks out there who didn't come from that background, and so things that are kind of secondhand or second nature to me really kind of come across as new and novel concepts, and I think we all have that bias.
Yeah, I think I agree. I've been in nonprofit management my entire career. So I got to agree with you on that. I think we just assume everybody knows what we know.
Yeah.
And we're not thinking about the end user receiving the information. And I think that's a benefit of being a consultant
Hmm.
as part of my career is that I have to think about that. It's
Yeah.
like who's using it on the other side? Am I understanding what their needs are? So I think that's excellent. I don't think you can emphasize that enough, Mike, that we need to train and educate our members
Yeah.
when they're doing this sort of work. It's so important. So that's number one. What's our second?
Sure. The second F, once you've gotten over the fact that you are the face of the issue, we always encourage people to remember facts. Facts matter in the conversations that you have, especially when you're trying to persuade lawmakers about a specific issue. One of the biggest sort of caution flags that we throw is we want to make sure that everybody who goes into meetings understands that it's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to say, I don't have that answer right in front of me, but I'll find it for you and I'll get back to you. The last thing that we want is somebody to destroy either their credibility or the credibility of an organization by either making up a statistic or just going with some sort of hyperbolic statement that really can't be backed up. That it's to me, this is where associations and groups like ours really have the opportunity, but also the responsibility to provide our membership with value, and we do that by generating the facts in the first place, by doing the research and supporting the research, by compiling it and sharing it, and then also by passing it along, by helping them be prepared to share it as well. One of the things that we do on a regular basis at the Pet Advocacy Network is we conduct studies with research institutions on the economic impact of the American pet sector. And that's something that we do for the federal level. We do it at the 50 state level. And then we arm our advocates with it when they go into those meetings. It's actually an entire section on our website where people can go and pull up the economic impact of the pet care community in their own state. Things like jobs created, taxes paid, and all of these are verifiable data. They're numbers that people can use to really kind of help drive home and underscore some of the points that they're making.
Well, and I think that is so important. I keep coming back to your comment though about making up statistics. I mean,
Oh,
funny but frightening because
exactly.
people do it. And you're so right about just giving people permission to say, I don't know. Let me look that up for you later.
Yeah.
I got that advice in college from my college advisor, Mike Salavoris, who I think is retired now. But he taught us that. He said, if you don't know, just say I don't know. It's
Yeah.
okay to admit you don't know anything. And I think it makes you look smarter.
I do. I think there's a stigma to it. I think for a lot of people, there's a belief that if you admit that you don't know something, people are going to dismiss you or think less of you. And I think to an extent that does kind of tie back to that concept of owning your expertise. Is that you assume that everybody knows everything you know plus. So
Mhm.
if you say you don't know something, that puts you at a disadvantage. When in reality, I mean, chances are the thing that you've gone in to talk about, you have far more experience experience and far more working knowledge of than somebody whose job it is to literally work on thousands of pieces of legislation across so many different topics every year.
And don't you find that they rely on you and your members to actually give them that education since they
In an
can't
ideal
focus?
world, yes. In an ideal world, that relationship has been built and built up and supported in a way that you are a trusted resource.
Mhm.
I think one of the challenges we have is convincing people to do those first steps to establish that relationship and then cultivate it in the first place.
And I think that is so important. That relationship building. I mean, obviously, relationships not an F. It's not one of the four F's, but there's obviously the underlying part of all of these, right? Is you
That's
have to
right.
build that relationship before you need to make an ask.
Yes, that's so important.
I don't think we can emphasize that enough. It's like when you and I were preparing for the episode and we were talking about what do we do in nonprofit management, we're talking about those relationships, and it really is about building relationships over time,
Yeah.
whether you're doing legislative activity or you're working with members or you're working with donors. Because whoever walks in a room and says to somebody, hey, why don't you write us a check for $20,000 when they've never talked to them before, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you've got to build that.
Yeah, now so much of what we do is about education and connection. And when we keep that in mind, it doesn't matter what the topic is, it doesn't matter who you're working with. If you keep education and connection at the forefront of it, you're going to have so much better chance of success.
I love that. That is such a great way to summarize that education and connection. And then that's really, you mentioned you organized a fly-in day because
Hmm.
and that education and connection is really what is going to make that fly-in day successful over a longer period of time. So you come in, you have that meeting on the fly-in day, and then you
That's
go
right.
back and your constituent, you're talking to the people locally, or maybe you're sending them emails back to Washington, but they know who
Hmm.
you are. You have to keep that going over time.
Yeah. Well, you've actually hit on the fourth F in the four F. So
Sorry.
no, that's okay. That's okay. We'll take them a little bit out of order.
Got it.
The fourth F in the four Fs is follow up, and follow up is essential to turning a single meeting into an ongoing relationship. Ideally, you've got a specific takeaway that you've left behind, and so you have the opportunity to loop back with them on that. Or if we go back to the item of facts, sometimes having something that you didn't know the answer to can be a blessing in disguise because it gives you that hook. It gives you that opportunity to loop back later and say, hey, it was great meeting with you and talking with you. During our meeting, I told you I would find this for you. Here it is. Take a look and let me know what you think.
And I think that is such a nice way to follow up too.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have the meeting, and for those of you out there who have never been to a meeting with a staff member of a member of Congress,
Hmm.
they're usually very short. You have a tiny amount of time to get
That's
your
right.
point across. You maybe leave them a folder of information that they may or may not read and may or may not pass on to the congressperson or senator. So they might like distract it.
Yeah.
They might not ask you any questions. They might look bored, and it's really not you. So just
Yeah.
remember that is because they have so many things pulling them in so many different directions. And if you can come up with a short one sentence explanation of why you're there,
Hmm.
like Mike just said, education and connection, that is such a great way to make that connection and keep it going and maybe get their attention.
You're so good at this because this is very impressive. This was a very subtle way to bring us back around to the third F, which is actually focus, and that is something that we really do try to drive home when we're preparing our members for a fly-in. Is that you've got 90 different things that you want to talk about that are all priority one for your business, but the reality is you're going to get maybe 20 minutes, and in that 20 minutes, you're probably going to be competing with any number of other things for people's attention. So the
Mhm.
more that you can do to really kind of hone in on we say try to keep it to about three topics over
Mhm.
the course of that 20 minutes, unless it's a meeting specifically about one key issue. But for a fly-in, if we can go in with three topics and spend maybe 5 minutes on each of them, where you're really just kind of hitting some of the key points, some of the positives if you're looking to try to get support for something, or some of the biggest concerns if you're trying to advocate against something. That goes a long way toward, first of all, making it something that the staffer can actually take away from the meeting and digest. But second of all, you make sure that you're establishing yourself as having a certain set of issues that you are passionate about. And it's great in life to be passionate about everything,
Mhm.
but in a meeting with a legislator or a meeting with staff, you want to make sure that you really kind of focus that passion in on a couple of key items.
Well, and I think what might be a good topic? So, for
Mhm.
example, you mentioned you have a lot of statistics on economic indicators.
Mhm.
So, would you say maybe come in and make a statement along the lines of, did you know that the pet care industry in the state of Missouri contributed $50 million
Yeah.
to the local economy?
Yeah, or employed 36,000 people. Yeah, it you're looking for, again, opportunities for connection.
Mhm.
And you're looking for ways to really kind of stand out, and to establish your bona fides, so that if you are going in with a specific ask, your ask is taken seriously. If you're not, if you're looking to start a relationship or to begin that process of building rapport, you're showing your credibility.
So, you just mentioned establishing your bona fides.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of people, maybe your members, so maybe they run a pet daycare and kennel,
Hmm.
a business. How can you help them do that? Because they might not feel like they have any bona fides. They might just feel like I'm a constituent with a concern. How can you build them up? You've mentioned briefly about owning your expertise.
Yeah.
So how can you help your members build up their feeling of I do have bona fides?
I think that's actually a really important thing that those of us in the association world can do for our members, which is to kind of help them. I don't want to say get over themselves, but maybe get outside of themselves a little bit, and to really kind of take a step back and look at their role, look at their experience from an outsider's perspective. You know, those of us here at the Pet Advocacy Network, what we do day in and day out is not the same as what our members do day in and day out. But what we do is we help our members to kind of put their minds to the way that they can talk about what they do so that it can be best received by people who don't do it on a daily basis. One of the things that we're very proud of is we've got a toolkit, a local activism toolkit, that we make available to our members, our dues paying members. And it really walks them through a lot of different things like reaching out to their elected officials at the local, state, and federal levels and starting the conversation, how to request a meeting, what it is you're looking to talk about, and we really do kind of walk them through that process of asking themselves the questions of, how long have I been doing this? Why
Mhm.
am I in this business in the first place? How many people do I employ? What's the last time that I engaged in some sort of continuing education? And as they ask themselves that question, it's almost impossible to not build yourself up and remind yourself to own your expertise.
That is such a great idea.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to say it's obvious, right? When you hear it, give them a list of questions to answer. But are
Yeah.
we thinking about that? Oh, that's fantastic. I love that because I think we all need to walk ourselves through that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even people who promote themselves as experts probably still need to do that.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
we all have our areas of expertise and having seen it from both sides, like I was a lobbyist many
Mhm.
years ago and went up as a lobbyist on behalf of our members. But also I've done fly-ins for ASAE. Of
Yeah.
course, I didn't have to fly in. I metroed in because I was in the DC area Metro Day, but
Yeah.
and doing it from that perspective as well. And you do have to be careful about what you say some
Yeah.
in those meetings. So and just being aware that you're just promoting your message.
Yeah, and it's
That,
it's worth pointing out that there's a distinction to be made between unearned confidence
Mhm.
and established expertise. And
Well,
that is something that I try to work with people on is, you don't want to go in there all bragging and blustering and saying, you work for me and you need to listen to me.
oh my God.
That's a great way to destroy a relationship before it ever got started.
Mhm.
But instead, if you go in and say, I'm a constituent, I've been doing this for 28 years, I'm a proud member of the community, I sponsor a local little league team, if you can show that you are a participant and that you're there to talk with them and not talk at them,
Mhm.
then you go a long way toward giving yourself the benefit of the doubt, and hopefully the office will as well.
That's wow. That is such a good point about I could see like a script outline coming out of this. Like you sit
Hmm.
down for the meeting and you start out with an economic piece of data. Like, did
Hmm.
you know we've brought this much money in? And hi, I've had my business in this community for 15 years,
Yeah.
and I'm in the local chamber of commerce, and I'm here today to explain this to you why this is important to us. And I,
Yeah.
I can just kind of see that whole outline already in my head, just coming together for members.
Yeah, in an ideal world, we take the time to walk people through that. We help them, in some cases even kind of role play it a little bit to give them the opportunity to get comfortable. But ultimately, I think comfort comes with repetition. And
Yeah.
so the other thing that we try to do is really encourage people to not make this a one-off thing. Don't make the DC fly-in the only time you reach out to someone who represents your business.
Mhm. That's such a good point because there should be like the follow-up note. Thank you for taking the
Yeah,
time to talk to me. And like you mentioned before, here's the information you asked for, or here's some more information
yeah.
based on that. And then maybe talking to the people locally. Now, last week we talked about Hill Day impact after the visit. So how you
Hmm.
keep that going. So bringing it back to focus and follow up,
Yeah.
the two the third and fourth F, I should say. So when you're doing that, so have you ever organized like a state Hill Day visit, like going to a state capital?
Personally, I haven't, but I've participated in a number of them, and our organization has actually received some requests to take our Federal Hill Day and try to work with some local, particularly interested individuals to try to help them kind of build a state version of it.
Mhm.
I think there's absolutely a lot of opportunity and a lot of value there. I think for a lot of us, it comes down to resource allocation. If you've got the bandwidth to do it, or if you've got a motivated group of folks on the ground in a given state, it's a great opportunity and it's a great idea. Again, the more you can encourage people to spend the time to build those relationships, and those relationships are built through face-to-face interactions.
Well, and I think that when we talk about how our members live their lives,
Hmm.
they're working, they're in their own community. Not everybody's in Washington, D.C. or
Yeah.
the greater D.C. area. So I think that's really important to emphasize that to our members who want to get the message out. It's
Hmm.
a local activity as well, and a state activity as well as the federal
That's right.
activity. And we have to pay attention to what's going on in our own state. For example, legislatively across the country, a lot of legislation starts in Massachusetts and California, and then it's developed there at the state level, and then other states look at it, and then sometimes it becomes a federal law. So we really do have to pay attention to what's going on state by state, and even
Definitely.
our own county or city, because they have their own laws and regulations as well. So yeah, I just say thank goodness the CAE exam only focuses on federal. Probably be like a 600 question exam.
Oof, it
But
was it was daunting enough as it was.
oh, it really was. I mean, and I know as I'm on a morning networking call. I try to get on a couple times a week, and one day we were talking about that, and we were saying, "Oh, I just never want to take it again." So,
Well, and I have to say, as someone who's taken it relatively recently, I actually just renewed for the first time this year. I have to thank you because a lot of the resources and the guidance that you've put out there really was something that myself and my VP of Communications, both internalized and used to very positive effect. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important. And this is sort of, this does relate to our topic of legislative engagement because it's very important to me as a lifetime nonprofit management executive professional person that people know about our profession and understand what we do and why it's important. And that is why I'm such an advocate for our credential,
Yeah.
certified association executive, because it makes us stand out. It says we're a serious profession. We're not a bunch of worker bees,
Yeah.
and we're not something that anybody can do. It is a specific skill set and knowledge base, and that doesn't mean that you can't learn it, but it doesn't mean you can just do it either.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you saying that because that's my way of advocating on behalf of our profession.
Yeah. And it makes it easier for us all to then turn around and claim our expertise.
That's right. And that's going to be another topic for another podcast. I can't wait to dig into that one.
I'm looking forward to it.
That's going to be fun. So, well, we have to go rogue for now. So it's time to wrap up this episode, or we're going to talk for another hour and a half. So, well, Mike, I want to thank you so much for sharing your 4 F's, which are face, facts, focus, and follow up. And that's good advice and steps for a lot of things. But before we wrap up the episode, I want to ask you one last question. How do you explain to people the difference between advocacy and lobbying?
Ooh. Um, on some levels, I don't know that there's that much difference. I will say though that I think the distinction to be made is that advocacy can be done by anyone,
Mhm.
whereas lobbying is really done by a professional on behalf of the constituency that they represent. I think advocacy, those of us at the Pet Advocacy Network, what we're doing is we're bringing passionate people together. We're arming them with the tools and the resources to be able to advocate for themselves while also being advocated for by us. The lobbying work, the day-to-day, pound the pavement meetings and hearings and things like that, that's something best done by the professionals because it's what we do. In the same way that I am not trying to tell my members how to run their businesses. I am claiming a certain amount of expertise as to the policy process and people that go into making legislation. And so to the extent that we can work together, that their expertise can inform my advocacy, we're all going to be a lot more successful.
Oh, that is an excellent explanation. Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
very well said. I like that. So, well, as we get to the end of the episode, Mike, I like to ask my guests, what is the one thought you would like the audience to take away today? And if they wanted to follow up with you and talk more about this topic, how could they get in touch?
I think the one thought that I want everyone to take away from a conversation about legislative engagement is that we can all do it and we all have an obligation to do it. We're a representative democracy. We are a country that is based on feedback from your constituents. And if it's done right, it makes everything that comes out of Washington or out of the state capitals that much better because it's informed by and shaped by the people who are most directly affected by it. So I think to the extent that I can give anyone any guidance, it's do it. Don't be intimidated. Don't sell yourself short. You can do this, and you need to. And if anybody wants to get into this a little bit further, kick some tires, or maybe just ask about ways to kind of map this to your own organization, our website is petadvocacy.org, and my email is just mbober, MBOBER, at petadvocacy.org. I'd love to talk to you about it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mike. You have really made legislative engagement accessible for everybody.
This has been great. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'm looking forward to having you back. I know we're already planning your next appearance. So keep an
Definitely.
eye out, everyone. So we have to go rogue for now, but I want to thank my guest, Mike Bober, President and CEO of the Pet Advocacy Network, for joining me this week. And if you would like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help your organization bloom outside the box, check out our website, roguetulips.com. Look at our services page. If you don't see exactly what you had in mind, let's talk because we can probably help you out. And if you're looking for continuing education for nonprofit management executives, we have an education program that is so big, it has its own website, the 501cleague.net. We're organizing study groups for this fall, and we're launching our first on-demand courses. So check out that website. If you're looking for some education, you can download our catalog for no fee. So that's it for this week. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our future exciting episodes. So on behalf of Mike and myself, thanks, and we'll see you next time.